Waiting for Keith. See what happens. We got that out. Settings, audio, it's working, yep. And the camera, yeah, that's fine. There it is, yep. Et voila, hey.
Hello, man.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. And I apologize if I'm a little bit slow tonight because I've had a few drinks with friends and was out enjoying a lovely balmy evening. But I'm happy to hear from you and happy to engage with you also in the aftermath of the South African elections, which I was thinking about a lot. And also, I just came back from buying some records. So we can go.
I know that. Well, anyway, it was a little last minute little thing. I mean, I've been through quite a euphoria in terms of 30 years later. I just let a couple of people know now about the stream. I don't know if we'll have anybody watching us, but it's cool. It's just us hanging out. It's like what Nick and George do on their show sometimes, and I'm kind of inspired by that.
Later, no worries.
But yeah, so I'm going to let you talk first. Tell me your thoughts. South Africa, the elections, 30 years later.
Well, I mean, I was this year not there for the elections, so I know nothing of the atmosphere and the vibe and the situation leading up to the actual vote. Whereas I was in South Africa during the 2004, 2009, and 2014 national elections. Also, several Gauteng provincial elections and also Johannesburg municipal elections. So I have been around the South African electoral culture for a long time. This year I was not there. So I don't want to say too much about the atmosphere of the overall political context, but I followed it very closely.
Oh, that's it. So I'm just checking again. You know me and this whole stream out. It says we've got 2 viewers. Just I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to mute for a moment. Go in.
I think you've muted me.
I've muted everything. I'm just going into YouTube. Just give me a second. It's the same thing. I just can't get the. Hang on a second. It'll be a second.
Please do your thing, man. I have no idea who those 2 viewers are, but I'm happy you're there. It's wonderful to be talking to someone. And I'm sure Esteban will sort this out in short order as he's the host of the stream. We should be back shortly.
Yeah, it seems like one up. I don't know, but if anybody finds it, I mean, I'm not quite. I'm not that concerned. This is more just mates hanging out, and if anybody wants to join us, they can join us. Yeah, it is working, and I sent it out to a couple of people. I said to the doctor who was here, I just said, hey, I might go live. A couple of other people. I actually spoke to quite an interesting cat. I'll talk to you about him afterwards. Who's got an amazing jazz channel. He's based in the States. Daniel van Edge. But yeah, so the election. I'm gonna. Sorry, I always get the little, the irks before I go live. So yeah, your thoughts. I mean, for me, it was a case of, hey, we got music. Yeah, hey Ivan, hello. Yeah, we're just gonna say, I'm not gonna be typing. We're just gonna chat, and if you want to jump up or want a link or whatever, you can come up later. Anybody is welcome. Keith, so for me, the most important thing is it's 30 years later, and we were sitting on a pinnacle of in some ways we still are, because we don't know what's going to happen. But the governing party, I mean, that's not the same person as Mandela that brought us into liberation or whatever. That didn't keep its promises to a lot of people, right? Is now not a majority within at least in the three largest economic centers, which is Durban, because of its support, the Cape, and obviously Johannesburg because it's the mining hub. Landlockedness is another issue, but I feel that we've got a lot of hope. As much as people are freaking out, the ANC within itself, it's all its political parties couldn't keep it together.
Sorry, who is freaking out? Because I don't see it as necessarily a bad outcome at all. I think everything I've seen politically in South Africa since I've started going there, I'm not from there, but I've been going there for more than 20 years. And it's always been optimistic and positive. And I see this as optimistic and positive.
I'm absolutely positive.
There's a lot of stuff we can talk about the individual voting patterns and regional voting patterns, which I think are now again to the fore after many years. But it's, I don't know. I don't know who would be freaked out by the election.
Well, let me tell you. So, who's being freaked out? It's people. It's the people that lost. It's the factions within the ANC that are freaking out here. So they're asking for recounts, or they so there's a bit of an alert in KZN right now around violence and all of that. So that's what I'm not me. I think this is good for democracy. I think it's incredible. I'm not, not that I'm necessarily supporting whatever, but at least it means that people are going to come together to come and govern and work a way forward in one of the most strategic countries in Africa, that has been an icon in terms of liberation and post-colonialism or whatever, but has not met certain expectations. But I think that there's a good chance that this place is not going to sink. People thought it's going to sink. I spent time in nearly a year in Zim, Sierra Leone, Liberia. Those are far less easy countries to live in, and life is a lot harder there than it is here for most. The only thing here is there's poverty, there's people immigrate here, and also there are a lot of guns and there's a lot of violence.
I haven't lived in any of those countries as opposed to South Africa, which I have lived in, but I visited all of them, and I agree with what you're saying. That's of course the case.
Yeah. So anyway, this is not a doomsday. This is actually a celebration.
Why should it be a doomsday? I mean, why assume that sort of idea towards it? What I see in the elections is that essentially there's now a necessity for coalition government, which I have said for at least 10 years would be a good idea for South Africa, because after the endless corruption scandals around Zuma and the state capture and the Gupta family, the whole thing within the ANC leadership was compromised. And from that point on, it always became obvious to an outsider like me that some coalition governments in the future is the way forward out of this. The ANC has lost legitimacy because of bad actors within their own ranks. But none of the opposition parties in South Africa are basically of much value. Some of them are potent at the regional level, but none of them have grown their own vote share in the last 10 years. All the opposition parties are sort of stuck in a limbo and cannot develop. So of course the ANC should lose votes, but should any of these parties gain votes, I think the election is positive completely.
I'm just typing something. I see there's 3 people watching. I just want to know. I'm still trying to work out how StreamYard works. I just can't get I need to ask some of my other vinyl community comrades. It's amazing, actually, though. Just getting back to what you were saying, I think you're right, because I think like the left and the right globally is not what it's not how we grew up. I mean, I studied economics. I did history of economic thought. My postgrad was in economics and Marxist economics, and then I wrote a thesis on anarchism. And it's just like the textbook stuff is just different now. It's just so different. We're living in such a different world.
Well, we are living in a different world. I mean, just to put that into context for you, when I was growing up, I was already oriented in some way culturally to what was going on in South Africa, and also to what was going on in underground or dissident communities in Czechoslovakia. I knew about those things. But growing up as a teenager in the United States, it was not at all possible to even visit those countries. I couldn't go there. I was absolutely blocked from receiving information from them, which I did anyway through whatever channels were available. And so now, living and working in these two countries and being completely absorbed in them, I see that, yes, of course, it's an enormous change. Couldn't have changed more. Almost all for the better, in fact.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just yeah, I've had to synthesize a lot, just in terms of being out for nearly 15 years across 21 countries, and then kind of back, and then obviously just going through rough personal stuff and all of that, but just kind of gravitating now to kind of watching what was happening, and then also getting my finger just marked and standing in that queue, and it was just so peaceful. Like, I think it was weird. I was hearing police and other sirens and noise consistently in the days running up to the election, and then the actual standing in the queue. The mate took me down. I went sort of the end of the day, and we went down. He'd voted earlier. And he's older, so he said to me, "Yeah, you're not. You're not 60 yet. He's 60." So I said, "I'm 57." He said, "Yeah, because there was a special queue where you can kind of move quickly, And he'd been at another place, and I said, "Oh, no, don't worry, it'll be quick." And literally, I think I was in and out in 15 minutes. Everything, they didn't have the resources for that they had, say, in the first election, and the monitoring and all of that, but absolutely peaceful. The IEC, the ballot boxes, the papers. I mean, the paper was like this. It was like we were looking for the old soccer party and all that stuff. The paper was like this, and I just thought about it, and I just made sure that I did not vote right wing, and I did not vote for white capital, but I made sure that my vote crossed a path towards a coalition. And I thought about it. I didn't just sit there or whatever, I just sat and I thought, and it took about 5 minutes or so, and I had to pull in 3 different pieces of paper. I don't know what the third one was, because there seemed to be 2 provincial ones. I'm not sure. And the big one. And then I folded them nicely, and I went and dropped them in the various boxes. And then I went up to a new local that I found, which actually, literally, it's like got pool tables in there. I went there with my mate. He's older, but he kind of enjoys it. And they've got whatever, but they've got pool tables there. But it's a new little local up near my old house where you were called the Pit Stop. And it's a very cool place. It's literally like pool, but mixed and just like people coming from across the railway line, from the flats and all of that, and the other people that are on the side, not fancy, and the guy's got a pub and stuff, and we just hung out there, had a bit of a meal, and went into the pool room and that. But it was a good feeling. It was a very, very good feeling. I came out and I was like, wow, there is a future. There is a future. And that was a beautiful feeling after so much tension, in the country over the past few years, and especially post-state capture, and Cyril and the pandemic, and then also load shedding and all of that, and I was like, okay, so it's not going to be that bad. And then I spoke to a couple of other people, on various levels, and people are most people I've spoken to, who've kind of have committed themselves to this country like I have, are saying, hey, it's going to be all right.
Of course, it'll be all right. It's a normal election result. It's only striking to me that even in the recent years where the ANC have lost a lot of credibility due to corruption scandals, none of these opposition parties can develop their strength from one election to another. They either all were the same or went down. The IFP went down. The EFF went down. The DA were exactly the same as 5 years ago. None of these oppositionists can develop any sort of attractive program either.
Well, what the saddest thing for me is that within the ANC, so whether you look at parties like COPE or and then and the others, so even Zuma's Mkhonto weSizwe or the EFF. I mean, Malema was the he was the leader of the ANC Youth League years back. So they've splintered and splintered and splintered. But what makes me sad is that why could not one party, why could they not splinter into one faction as opposed to all these different factions, which is basically kind of dispersing the party into like pieces of sawdust, which is very, very sad.
Maybe so. The ANC obviously has a outstanding intellectual legacy as a party of opposition and eventual liberation, and a more questionable or mixed record in terms of government, especially since 2009. But I don't know if describing what's going on now as just splinters within the ANC is a legitimate answer either. I think that many of the things you mentioned were highly regional in terms of their orientation, which the MK has now won in KwaZulu-Natal. They will be the ruling party in the provincial legislature there. Totally new party before this election, but it's regional. The Democratic Alliance, which is the largest of the opposition parties, has always historically been based almost exclusively in the Western Cape. COPE, which you also mentioned, which didn't even contest this election, but which
they were on the ballot paper. Yes, they were.
Okay, they didn't, but they received no support to elect an MP. That was always an Eastern Cape sort of oriented party as well. What surprised me the most among these small parties, if we're going to bother talking about them, was that the party which did enormously grow its support, which the Democratic Alliance did not, the Economic Freedom Fighters did not, IFP dropped, MK of course went from nothing to mainly being a regional party.
Well, but zeros to heroes.
Yes, but the really strange thing is this Patriotic Alliance in the Western Cape, which managed to secure 9% of the vote there, as I saw, and will have several members of parliament. But this thing seems to be very much a weird right-wing, very socially conservative Western Cape exclusive movement. What do you know about those?
Yeah, I mean, we are living in a I suppose it's it's the same as my brother living in Texas. We're living in a bit of a semi right-wing bubble at times. Yeah.
But who are the Patriotic Alliance? Because as far as I can tell, it was founded by gangsters and former criminals like
I need to check it out because I mean also there's this other people. I mean it's all just gone. Yeah, it's gone. I mean I've been following the big there's been interviews about this is and just small the faction stuff I've kind of just skirted across. I've been watching sort of so the night after or before the election or after the election, I put on a YouTube or whatever stream, and I think Malema must have spoken for about 4 hours. I listened to that, and he was like just going on and on and on. Then I, listened to Zuma's speech. Obviously, the presidential speech yesterday impressed everybody globally because it was a bit of an example. But, obviously, people have got to play, the speech writers have got to write the right speeches.
I think that
the DA's,
for the moment.
the DA's, there's been some speeches that have actually irked me a little bit, as with the others, but I'm just thinking that because now everybody's talking about, what's the coalition going to be? I've been reading the Daily Maverick and all of that, but I'm not sure it's going to play out differently in different provinces, and then how it plays out nationally, that I'm not sure, how that's going to be, but they're saying that maybe
it's essentially a return to the 1994 model, which is to have a consensus government, and the KwaZulu-Natal is problematic.
And the Western Cape to a certain extent, because it's always it's got a different demographic.
Well, of course.
As is KZN, we go back to music. You always speak about KZN being the New Orleans, and the Indian population there, which is mostly Muslim.
Yes.
And then the colored population, that came out of slavery, and that's also bunched up with mixed race marriages and all of that. That's very different culturally. Plus the gangs and the guns, the gangs, and the bullets and the railway line and the that separates the rest of Cape Town from the flats.
So, and I think Western Cape are actually sending the biggest number of political parties to the new parliament, because there are from the Western Cape alone, there are the Good Party, the NCC, and I think the PAC person is from down there. So Western Cape had a very interesting and widely spread election result, which is also it's positive to see, of course.
Yeah, no, I mean it is,
I'm just questionable Patriotic Alliance Party, but that's for another conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I spoke to my mate Daniel today, who's this, he's got a jazz channel in the States. He calls himself the jazz. He's the jazz shepherd. And he's got a lot of South African followers who follow him. And he's originally from Canada, but he's got like the most awesome jazz collection. I mean, you'll walk into that room and you'll sit there for weeks. And I gave him a call before this because I'd spoken to him about that, because also I want to start getting to talk about things like the cultural boycott and all of that, and it's just like I'm feeling at least I can kind of focus on music and narrative and start putting it in place, getting to the gig, seeing what the musicians are saying, how they're feeling. I think our obsession here and everywhere else with the Palestinian issue that's another issue, and it's global. It's global, and it's important what South Africa's done, but at least we can move ahead as possibly a coalition democracy to actually make a much better statement and actually work within the world in a better way than our people have perceived us to be, because this is a great country, I think. And it's not going to go down.
I think so too. Obviously, it's my second home for many years. I love going to South Africa. It's a place that continues to influence me greatly, even though I haven't been there in a few years. But in the last 20 years, I've been there dozens of times, literally. So it's a place that's very dear to me. Also, I don't know. I just think that, of course, it's a good thing to have a coalition government. That's hardly even worth discussing. That's obviously a good thing because it involves compromise, and therefore it's a highly democratic mode of forming a government. Coming from the EU, where I live here in Prague, Czech Republic, that's obvious to me that coalition government is your normal outcome of a democratic election. So I'm also happy to see it for South Africa. It's certainly positive. I'm
No,
also happy
absolutely.
that the ANC or the dominant party running it, because even if this ANC is not the ANC of 30 years ago, as Stefan said earlier, of course, it's still none of the opposition parties um, are necessarily that impressive. But to bring them in as junior partners in a coalition government, it's probably the ideal political moment to do that.
No, absolutely. And as much as it's not that just getting back to the issue around Palestine and Israel and all of that is I wasn't sort of putting it down. I just think I think that we also need South Africa. I always often talk about when my experience when I worked in Myanmar. Hey, Lockie's here. Hello, Lockie. How you doing? And also, Keith, he's asked about Mexico, which I want to get onto afterwards.
I was just trying to point your attention to it.
But very importantly, I've been in Myanmar, and like I said, I've broken a Ramadan fast there with the Bangladeshi ambassador, and there are marginalized people there, and that's hectic. So we can't just be waving. We should be waving a Palestinian flag, a Myanmar flag, and then also, obviously there's the whole LGBT issues in Africa where, people are just not represented. I reminded people the other day, we were getting back to the Holocaust about there was the yellow star and the pink triangle. And, some African countries, I mean, you can be killed, if you come out. So these are the kind of things that we need to just keep fighting for, and that's why I always go back to bands like Husker Du and Fugazi and all of that. Anyway, do you just get your merger on and talk about? I want to know what you think about Mexico. Yeah.
Well, I don't know how much I am entitled to speak about Mexico. I'm very happy that Mexico has elected first a female, secondly Jewish, thirdly a climate scientist who is by all accounts a very reasonable person. I think she will be a wonderful addition to the world stage from everything I know of her. But I can't really comment about what the social conditions are in Mexico and what provoked this because I don't live there. I'm happy to see it, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, it's right on the border of obviously where my brother and family are, and where our fellow producer is, who's
Yes.
spent a lot of time there. It's Texas. And that's a great place, as you know. You go down there, and besides some of the politics and other stuff, I mean, Texas is just a fantastic place to be. It's lovely to go there. There's good food. There's good music.
That's certainly so, but it's still nice that Mexico had their election independently of that and elected seemingly a very progressive voice. So that's really all that I think I can say about it. But I'm happy to see it. Of course, I don't know. I really don't know enough about Mexico to comment further on that because I haven't been there many years. That's it's not a country in the foreground of my imagination most of the time either. But in recent days, it was certainly because of this election and this historic election as the first female president in North America, the first Jewish president in North America, and the fact that she is a climate scientist. She seems to be the sort of person I will look forward to hearing more from.
Yeah. Yeah, so I suppose it's been a good week in terms of politics. At least some hope.
Well, I mean, I'm not a pessimist in political terms most of the time anyway, which is easy for me to say because I live in the EU and my life is very nice here. But I try to be very aware of elections in other countries and follow them. And I always remain more or less I am more optimistic than I am pessimistic. Always. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's been happening musically?
Yeah, musically for me, I saw 2 gigs in the past week. I went to see several nights ago Mike Watt from the Minutemen and Firehose and the Stooges play with his Italian band Il Sogno de Marinaro. Sorry, and I had not seen this particular band before, but Mike Watt is in town, so you show up, you show respect.
Firehose, eh?
This guy is a total legend and hero to us. So I went with friends to see that gig, and then just the day before yesterday, there was a gig of a band that I'm friends with and who are also in my film Vinyl Generation, Please the Trees, who are sort of a Czech psychedelic noise band, but who work very creatively with feedback and distortion. They're an interesting noise band. They're a melodic noise band. But I have worked with these guys for many years, but they did this little gig in this small venue at the bottom of my neighborhood, which is in kind of a ruined building called Bike Jesus. And they opened for this Czech well-known noise band, opened for uh, half Ukrainian student post-punk goth band from Brno, from the Brno University, uh, also in Czech Republic. And this band were totally unknown to us. They would never have got a gig in this venue if Please the Trees didn't open for them. So it really was like a nice gesture and a nice thing to see that this old punk rock ethos still exists. And we got to see this really nice, interesting show by these young Ukrainian women. They were like a 21st century version of the Sugar Cubes. That was like their sound, but it was like this half goth, half post punk, nicely rhythmic, but a little bit anarchic vibe. It was wonderful. So I saw
quite funny.
2 interesting shows in the last week.
I pulled that out last night, eh?
Yes.
This is, but you know, the calm is weird because and I don't know if anybody else is still watching or whatever, but you know, just the how do I explain it? You know, when I spoke to you earlier on WhatsApp before we decided we're going to go onto this live chat, was more about the record that you'd bought this week. You know, that you were listening to before you got onto the show. You know, which is just the contrast of how we gravitate musically. You know, because that was just an interesting one when you were talking about that particular MGM pressing. So, you know, I'm just sorry, I'm pushing buttons in terms of how I just love what you pull out of the hat.
Let me show you. Then I'll be happy to show you just the things I just bought, because I went and bought those records today. The reason we were speaking about it was because I had that little WhatsApp chat with you before we went live, and I had just come home. But I will certainly show those things. I'm just calling attention to the comment that there is also apparently a debate in the UK general election coming up. So
no, but with Lucky, you never know. Lucky, is that serious or is that like mumbo jumbo coming from Kyrgyzstan?
Who knows? Let me show you this record. I'll be right back.
We love Lucky. Oh lordy. Rishi Sunak and Kirill. Lucky. I've been following the SA election and the Mike Tyson fight and other rubbish.
Well, the UK election is coming up, and that's a major thing also, and that is because of so many other things going on. It's hardly been talked about internationally, but the comment is very good. Of course,
no, absolutely, and especially with Brexit and all of that. So,
well, certainly, definitely. Okay, you were asking
on a jacket. It's a bit cold here. Hey.
Okay.
freezing. We had, that Cape Town rain, hey Keith?
Of
That
course.
wet. It's like that Parisian field, that wet. So it's like up and down. The microphones. Yeah, I couldn't get the Bluetooth headphones going off charge or whatever. I don't know what happened, but anyway, it's fine.
So, do you want to see these records that
Of course.
I spoke to you first about? Let me reverse the order. I spoke to you first when you first called me that I found this wonderful thing, which is an original press of the MGM score to the musical "Kiss Me, Kate" with Catherine.
That's got Howard Kill's name. He was an actor, correct?
That's right. Well, these are actors because this was a film musical that MGM put out in the 1950s, which is a Cole Porter score. Which the plot of the musical is that actors are staging a production of The Taming of the Shrew, the Shakespeare play, but the same romantic dynamic is developing between the male and female lead. So it's a quite odd but very charming musical from the 1950s. And
I've got a question to ask you because I've got my late dad's original, Porgy and Bess. So that's
you need a Porgy and Bess copy of the film, the Otto Preminger film, or of any stage version?
It's a stage thing. I'll pull it out. But I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay, go ahead and ask your question, please.
Okay, show us the back of the cover. Just put it in front of your face. No, the back.
I'll show you the.
It's a British press. It's a flip back, right?
No, this is. Look at this, man.
Yeah, that I know. Yeah,
that's these were the MGM records at that time for film soundtracks, which also included soundtracks for musicals.
Yeah, but now bring up the sleeve.
Just a second.
I know it's a British press.
Certainly, it's a British press. But
yeah, and it's got the back and the bottom. Just go up a bit. Well, down. Yeah, it's that flip. Yeah. That's how you know. That's that British little indentation at the bottom there.
Anyway, that was what I was talking to you about when we spoke. But
that's a gem. It looks like it's hardly been played.
It's already a gem, but this one is even better, which I discovered only after we spoke. Look at this, which is basically some sort of European bootleg of two different radio concerts of the Count Basie Orchestra in the 1930s. And one is and these are basically radio transcriptions of radio broadcasts in the United States at the time. America Dances from September 7th, 1938. And the B-side is Meadowbrook, November 3rd, 1937. But there is a radio announcer between the tracks, so it's very much like a straightforward artifact. But the recordings of this band, this is the Killer Basie just before the Second World War band. I found this for basically the equivalent of €1 or €1.
Where was that pressed? Do you know?
I'll show you. It's like a white label. It's a European bootleg of old American radio transcriptions. I don't know anything about the origin of this record, but it is excellent. Look at this. It's that's not
East European. They need to try and make you big. So I'll just have a look.
Can you even? Where is
the thing?
Here you go.
No, it's been printed somewhere. It's
it's a white label with very cheap lettering on it.
That's amazing. I mean,
yes, not only is it an amazing artifact as a weird semi bootleg record. I mean, this is the entire packaging, Daisy on the Air with the set list. But this record was so cheap, how could I not buy it? It was,
Of course.
look at this. But not just the weirdness and the rarity of the record impressed me. When I actually listened to it, it's awesome. It's such a good record, and it's such a good band. And I have several other of these sort of European 1970s press records of swing bands and radio transcriptions. I have one of Frank Sinatra with the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra, and many others. Also, some Ellington records, and most of these things were either recorded for armed forces radio, in which case they were recorded to a disc of some kind and then broadcast to the United States Army and armed forces during the Second World War, as if they were live concerts. The second thing were the live shows that were sponsored by radio stations in the United States, which often made their own internal recordings. So from both of these sides, many European bootleg records of these types of concerts are available. They happen to be also mostly very cheap when you find them because they're unofficial records and they have no value on the jazz collectors market. And also they're the type of thing you would only find in Europe, in antiquarian, in sort of used record stores, used bookstores, in cheap bins. It's the type of thing that you're likely to turn up. So I have several of these. I don't know if any of them are worth anything, but they're wonderful, wonderful recordings because they capture
I've got some equivalent South African ones, jazz things, but I want to just get back to Loki's comments and then we can, because
sure.
obviously he's joined us in the. He said he's found a Spanish issue of Johnny Clegg's Dust and Dreams. He said it's on his way in the post. Actually, it's interesting. My best Johnny Clegg pressing, and I haven't kept all. I've got the earlier stuff, more the Jaluka stuff, but I've got one pressing, which is actually a US pressing, which because we were doing recycled vinyl, all that. I've got an incredible. I don't know which one it is. God, I need to look at it. It was one of the last ones that he did with before Savuka became too much. More that one of his big ones. But I've got the US press. And it's absolutely. I think it was it mastered by Hilton Rosenthal or whatever. But that's a goodie. But Spain issuing Johnny Clegg. It's just weird how all this stuff just spreads. Africa's everywhere.
Loki, since you were asking what my cat thinks of the Basie record, my cat generally likes that sort of big band swing, or even mostly swing or sort of Russian or big symphonic music, Prokofiev, Mahler sort of stuff. And the cat likes that. What the cat does not like is music which is too percussive with too much drumming, or music which is too free and too out there.
So
but the cat still puts up with my need to listen to free jazz at least once in the day. We have a compromise. We have that.
So it's not a kitty cat for Baba Olatunji or for drumming circles.
No, but the cat actually does listen to music, and I have noticed like there are certain records of Prokofiev or Mahler or certain things which have a lot of low strings in them. Or I have one Alban Berg record. The cat will really sit and creep up to the speaker and listen to it. So the cat is actually engaging in his own way. I don't know what he hears, but I think it's the lack of a lot of percussion and the presence of really low strings, in patterns. So the cat can listen to that. So I've observed this cat is 14 years old. I've been watching him listen to my music collection for a long time, and some of it he really does listen to. So I like the question. I've been observing this cat for years to see what music he actually engages with.
Well, like he's a cat person, so yeah.
Person to
And I was on George Borden's show the other night, and George has got his dog there, and his streams can go. I mean, we went about 6 hours with Nick and a couple of other people, and but at the end of the day, George was saying to people like, "Listen, guys, we've got to shut the stream down because actually, my dog's not happy. The dog wasn't happy, and it's like my brother. He sits around his stereo system, and there's Avery, all the other dogs, and Avery does, the dog's there. Just
Since we're talking about dogs, let me give a shout out again to Akashic Books. I know I'm talking about them every time that we do these streams, but I really like what they do, and Johnny Temple is a good friend, and I like him. I support him, and I always liked all the bands he was in, but I like Akashic Books, if possible, even more. And Akashic Books have just published, I think 2 or 3 days ago in the United States, this new short novel by the writer George Pelecanos, who is a DC very well-known crime writer who also wrote The Wire and Treme and The Deuce and all of these HBO series for David Simon. But published recently with Akashic Books this short novel, which is basically written from the point of view of a dog who's trying to stay out of kill shelters. And the dog, it is kind of a crime novel about the criminals underworld and criminal situation in Washington D.C., but narrated from the point of view of this dog who understands that not all people are his friends, but he doesn't necessarily understand why. So it's a fascinating, weird, experimental novel, influenced by Franz Kafka, by Mikhail Bulgakov, but it's also a Pelecanos novel about contemporary Black Washington D.C. So the release of this book was just the other night, and to perform at the book launch, because Johnny Temple, who is the publisher of the book with Akashic Books, is also the bassist in Soulside and Girls Against Boys and Fake Names and other bands. Johnny was asked to put together a music project to play at the book launch. And so they had a little concert with Johnny on bass, Pete Saul from the band Scream, who are a legendary DC hardcore band, first band to put on an LP on Discord Records. Pete Saul was the vocalist and harmonica player, and the guitarist and drummer were from the Mesthetics, Brendan Canty and Anthony Perron. And but this wonderful, amazing.
I listened to that record, by the way. I streamed it. It's amazing.
So these guys, half of the Mesthetics and Johnny Temple from Soulside and Pete Stahl from Scream, did this set of. I was not there. I knew about the gig because Johnny told me about it. But the concept of the gig was that this band would play cover versions of well-known songs about dogs or relating to the world of dogs. So they were playing things like Rain Dogs by Tom Waits, Dirty Old Egg Sucking Dog by Johnny Cash, and also Do the Dog by the Specials, Maga Dog by Bob Marley.
What about Rufus? Was it Rufus Thomas Walking in the Dog? Or
actually, this is the funny thing. When we actually had the initial conversation in Brooklyn more than a month ago, between myself and Johnny and Tom Pryor, we were talking about this, and we mentioned the Rufus Thomas Walking the Dog, and Johnny wasn't convinced, but he was also thinking like, what's going to work for Pete Stahl and his voice. So I don't know what the eventual lineup was. We definitely spoke about that. We spoke about all these songs, and even talking about this, like trying to make a playlist of dog cover songs, was a lot of fun. So I can only imagine how much fun the concert was.
That's amazing. I mean, just to kind of think, just like we could have a whole, just think about shows about dogs and all of that, and just like, going from the Broadway shows and everything else. Dagon's going about Show Me Your Hands. There's been some other vinyl stream. Just Keith, just to give you what's going on whatever. There's somebody else that's been framed by somebody else horrible because of him. That's supposed to be trawling or whatever. So it's got to do with hands and stuff. Dagon, Keith is from he's from the United States of America, but he's been based in Prague for many, many years. How many years, Keith?
More or less on and off since 1991. I came here the first time to Prague, Czech Republic, where I now live, in August 1991. Before that, I lived in Washington, D.C., and after my first time staying in Prague as a student in the early 90s, I lived in New York. But since the end of 1995, beginning of 1996, I live here in Prague. And about 20 years ago, approximately 20 years ago, I started going to South Africa all the time for work-related reasons, also personal reasons, and also just developing a love for the country. But so I live in Czech Republic. I work in South Africa. I'm from Washington, D.C. mostly. I've lived in Prague longer than I've lived anywhere else. So admittedly, I have a weird accent in English, but I also have a very open ear to any form of English.
That's interesting, yeah. And
it is what
I went to pour myself a little whiskey, but I've got an interesting story to tell you about Prague, well, Czech Republic. So I was talking to my brother the night before last.
Actually, no, I'm gonna respond to this. Sorry, this what Loki is saying is just mischief. That's not true.
Loki's full of mischief.
Smetana would not be turning in his grave because the Czechia rebranding is only for sports teams. It's not the official name of the country. It's just for sports jerseys in football or ice hockey, and it's just purely a branding exercise. The official name and what's on the currency and what's on the banknotes is Czech Republic. This notion of Czechia is only a marketing and branding scheme which is not legally binding. So when I say I live in the Czech Republic, I mean it. It is the Czech Republic. I don't have a big problem with Czechia as a thing on a jersey because it's easier to print there, but that's all it is.
Maybe
you knew all of that and you're just provoking me. I don't know. It's but
Lucky will. Like that, Lucky's renowned for that. Don't. But I'm going to tell you an interesting thing. So
please do.
I got into drinking single malt whiskey through a mate of mine that I used to work with, who used to work at the. We were both working in HIV/AIDS at the Center for Communications at Johns Hopkins. He was based in Baltimore, had come through to South Africa. When I lived in the States, I'd visit him a lot. But he taught me about PD whiskey and all of that, which I like. I like the PD whiskey. But anyway, over the years, coming out of Mongolia, I got into Japanese whiskey and other stuff. And my brother likes his whiskey. And I'd always kind of get a nice bottle for my late dad or whatever, whatever I could get at duty free or whatever. And funny enough, when I was in Paris, was the last time before we left Paris that I went to visit my brother in the States. So that was about 2013. We had a local little cave, the cave where they sell wine and stuff, and they had a little restaurant there. It was in Montreuil, which, as you know, was where the Lumiere brothers started and all of that. Great little cave, good restaurant. And my friends Sophie and Fred lived there. She had the most, amazing collection of music. She's friendly with Susie Ronson, Mick Ronson's late Mick Ronson's partner, and other music connects with got me into a lot. But they showed us the cave, and so I go there, and we used to hang out there. And I'm going back to the States, and I think I got to bring my brother a bottle of whiskey. So go there, and this cave was also a little bit of a whiskey paradise. And guess what? They had a bottle there of whiskey that was still made in Czechoslovakia as the last single malt distillery before Czechoslovakia became the Czech Republic. And it's you can go and Google it. It's called the Hammerhead. Right? I bought that bottle. My brother pulled it out the other night. We went on to some whiskey valuation thing because that stuff's quite rare right now. that bottle is probably worth like anything between $3,000-$4,000 now compared to what I paid for it in 2013. It's never been opened. And he just said to me, he said, when you get to the States, we're going to open that up. But I know that you and I are going to get to, Keith, you and I are going to get to Texas at the same time. I don't know if you drink whiskey, but because it's from your land and it's.
I drink whiskey, you've seen me drink whiskey.
Yeah, exactly. So, but because, and it's a bit like the vinyl, it's a bit of a theme like behind Vinyl Generation. Because if you go to try and, I think that whole distillery or whatever was like unknown, and then they found it afterwards, and then there was all the stuff that the last of the bottles that were made, and then they kind of went, and somehow I found one in Montreux, and it's sitting in my brother's living room, waiting. But anyway, yeah, it's just interesting, it's a bit of a Vinyl Generation story about a distillery, and the whiskey's called the Hammerhead. I'd expect like somebody like Lemmy to be drinking it. Just by the way, Dagon's asked a question, Keith. He says, "How do we know each other?"
You can answer that.
I just discovered while I was out of the country and while I was trying to getting this Flame project together and all of that, I'd realized that Keith, while the years that I was out of the country, had made one of the most seminal documentaries about South African music, which is called Punk in Africa, amidst the others. And actually, I found my copy. Just let me pull it out. Is it here? Oh God, no. Okay. I get the disc. At least it's got. It's got. Whose face is on the disc? It's from National Wake. Gary or Punker.
Oh, Keith? What is you mean on the? Are you talking about the DVD cover for Punk in Africa?
Yeah. Or yeah. Well, you just gave me the disc. I never got the cover.
Oh, well, it's the same. It's the yellow and black, right? It's the same graphic. What it is, it's a montage of several seminal South African punk artists, including Steve Money and Punka Koza from National Wake, but also Michael Fleck from Wild Youth and Gay Marines, and there is one other figure, Cabello was his first name, from one of the more recent bands. So the logo of Punk in Africa is those various people who are broad. They not only work together nice graphically, but they are a narrative among themselves. Those people who were chosen for the logo over several decades of the South African punk scene.
Yep, and maybe this is just the right time now. I always just like to.
If you told me that you wanted that we were going to talk about that, I would have brought a copy to show you how it looks like.
While we're about it, because and as much as there might be only 2-3 people whoever's watching, but let's talk about Wild Youth and Mr. Fleck.
Sure. I mean, I'm a big fan of Michael Fleck and Wild Youth. Obviously, I gave him pride of place in my film Punk in Africa. And Michael Fleck is of Czech origin. His family were originally from Brno in the Czech Republic. I don't know, my relationship with Fleck has always been wonderfully warm and engaging. So I cannot not say the best possible things about Wild Youth. Wild Youth were also the first punk band in South Africa to play in public. They were the first punk band in South Africa to put out a 7-inch record. They were one of the first punk bands in South Africa to appear on the first compilation of new wave and punk bands in South Africa called Six of the Best. And every single first that you can come up with in terms of the history of punk rock subcultures in Southern Africa, Wild Youth will be at the top of that list. And they were a very good band. So,
and Dagon's asking, is it expensive? He's sick of Vancouver.
I don't know if it's more expensive or not than Vancouver. I've just come from being on a long work trip to the United States. Some things are cheaper here, some things are cheaper there. And I don't think it's a great renters market anywhere in the Western world now. So I'm happy. I'm already based here. I have my place. I'm not worried about that. I'm not renting. But I don't know, man. Like I think what would screw anyone up trying to move to Europe now is that the price of rent is extremely high to live in any capital city in the EU.
Just getting back to Wild Youth, I'm just going to go into Discogs here quickly. You know, I mean, Wild Youth. It's. I mean, it's seminal. You know, it's roughly it's sort of the same a year or two after the Pistols, right?
It's basically the record came out in 1978, so it's 1 year after the Sex Pistols album, but maybe less than 1 year. It came out in Durban, self-produced 1978.
So I'm just going to actually. I mean, that 7-inch now. What you know, it's probably one of the most expensive Wild Youth. The Wild Youth artist, yeah, Chris Fleck. Ruben Rose, yeah, Michael Fleck. Let's just see. This is the no Slapgat and Roll. There were all these reissues, all 11 releases. I'm just going to go through. Yeah. What about me, Wild Youth? Yeah. Yeah, the 1979 7-inch. Yeah. I mean, it was last sold in April 2022 for $1,500 US.
$1,500 US. Wow.
No.
No, that's
not
amazing.
For sale. Now, if I go into the stats, so I'm not going to sell this item. I mean, I don't own it. I've probably. Let me just go into rated by 18 users, but let's go to the stats. I know who's got it, and I'll tell you. So the contributors, one of the contributors on Discogs is a very good friend of mine who's based in Germany, who's got an incredible collection of South African and African music. I'm not going to say who it is. I mean, I can't mention people's names. Now, who owns it? You know, I'm just seeing who I know on Discogs because I know.
I can tell you, I have seen personally 3 copies of the "What About Me" single.
Well, no, yeah, I know who owns it. Do you own it?
No, I don't. I wish I did. I have every Wild Youth reissue that has come out, including all the 7-inches, and I also have a copy of the 6 of the Best, but I do not have that.
I gave away my 6 of the Best to a good friend back in the day when I thought it was like not worth having, and I can kick myself now. But anyway,
now it's funny, man. Good luck finding another one.
No, it's fine. But he's got my Louis. He's holding my Louis Armstrong tapes safely as well. You know those tapes. It's fine. It's a mate. Yeah, I mean it's not. So why I said to you who owns it, because on Discogs, just by the way, one person who owns the Wild Youth is a person called the Jones family. That's why I asked you.
It's not me. I don't know.
No, it was just a joke. Then there's a South African academic here who owns it. One record dealer that I know here. 17 not shown. Let me just see who else. This person. Hang on. This is interesting. Person in London that I've dealt with owns it. Yep. Obviously, I'm sure it's that's the ratings. The ratings? One other person who might be in South Africa, and then there are 370 that want it, and I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, everyone and the bee's knees who understands punk music on that level wants that record. Yeah,
it's a legendary and rare thing. And I think only a few hundred copies were ever pressed. And even when I was doing my film Punk in Africa, and I started interviewing these people probably at the end of 2009, like Benji Moody, who is one of the people that showed us a copy of that on camera. Yeah, that was probably 2009. And so at that time, everybody from then on that I encountered who had a copy were very protective. So I mean, I made the Punk in Africa film, and I don't have a copy of it. I would love to have a copy of it. It's ground zero of punk rock in the whole African continent. It's an amazing artifact, wonderful thing to have, of course. But all the Wild Youth 7-inch reissues are also limited issue things, which are worth very good money as collector's items.
Michael's an incredibly interesting person. You know, I mean, he's intense, but I mean, you know, we've had our ups and downs over the years, but you know, the comms have been good. But he's an incredible, yeah, historically, you know, in terms of, and also again, it goes back to Durban, what I was saying earlier, you know, and just what emanated out of that town.
Sure,
you know,
I wish you had told me that we might speak about this. I have all those Wild Youth, at least all the reissue records somewhere, but I don't know where they are. I can't find them on this spur of the moment. But I have even those 7 inches and the double LP Wild Youth and Gay Marines reissue. Wonderful stuff, which has come out in recent years. So now it's possible to really explore the vinyl legacy of Wild Youth. All the stuff is available. That original single is extraordinarily valuable. $1,500 is crazy even to me. I thought it was still, the last time I heard it was selling for 600. So it's unbelievable that it's that sought after, but it deserves to be. It's the absolute epicenter of punk rock culture in Durban, in South Africa, in the rest of Africa. Period. It's the first and most. It's the first pure and original expression of punk rock spirit to come on in South Africa.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, you know, as we start, you know, because we're always going record culture, and you know, that's what brings us all together, you know. We still stream and we play CDs and whatever, but I'm also starting to discover that records that I thought were, you know, pre-pandemic or whatever, that I put them in Discogs or what, even certain classical things and whatever, I'm suddenly like looking at it and I'm like, shit, you know, look at what this is worth. You know, and just suddenly it's like, you know, the demand obviously for physical product and music has gone ballistic.
Yes, certainly, I agree with that. I just wanted to say, in response to the question, yes, of course, Franz Kafka was from Prague and is my homeboy. But he is someone. He was someone who had a very complicated and at times antagonistic relationship to the city and the sense of place, which was related to his own identity being caught between cultures. And so I don't know if he is a native son. I don't know if he's the most representative writer to come from here. Certainly well worth checking out.
Yeah, just got Chances. He runs a stream as well. He's just popping in between duties. These are all the good peoples that are here. Yeah, Keith, and yeah, just thinking, you know, just I was going through, because I'm now trying to sort of sort the riffraff of some classical music out that is not my favorite, or I've got duplicates, but it's not hugely valuable. And you know, I'm donating that to the Cape Town Hi-Fi Club, because they always, you know, and that's a good thing to do. So I've also been sifting out stuff, but I mean, just going through, you know, and I'm finding more and more stuff that was either pressed in Poland or what was then Czechoslovakia, you know, from that collection, you know, and then suddenly I'm like, oh, should I, you know, and then I look and like, I haven't heard it, you know, because it's in that hall of classical that I had. And then I suddenly look, and, you know, obviously if it's more avant-garde-ish or if it's chamber, I'm like, it stays, you know, I can't let go of it, you know, when I'm sitting here with too many records. And that's the scary thing. Actually, I just wanted to pull out, because I found one. I don't know where it is. But yeah, it was just another, also just a very, very weird sort of also Czech or Polish press that I pulled out the other night, that I was just like, you know, didn't even know. And then part of it was also still written in Cyrillic as well. So it wasn't Czech.
That's probably Bulgarian or it's. I mean, most of the the Yugoslav records, which came out in that era, are not in Cyrillic but in Latin script. But in Bulgaria, a lot of the what is it, Balkan? Yeah, Balkan tone was the state.
Balkan tone. Yeah, I know. I've got a Bulgarian jazz compilation of
Yeah,
like
that's
Ellington.
that stuff's often in Cyrillic. Otherwise, it's generally from the Soviet Union.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, if I pull out, say, for example, I'm just gonna move the microphone. I actually do want to pull it out if I can find
Loki, since you're asking about Supraphon, Supraphon was the Czechoslovak state label under communism, but it existed already before communism as a independent record label, releasing 78 RPM records since the 1930s. After 1945, the Czechoslovak recording industry and publishing industry was nationalized, and Supraphon became the state company, which was producing all vinyl records here until basically up until 1990. And because I've just been out buying a bunch of cheap records, I of course have one here, and this is a classical music Henry Purcell English Baroque composer. But I'll show you what at that time, mostly the pop music, which included also jazz and different types of rock, had yellow labels. But the Supraphon classical label were blue labels like this.
No, I'm sorry, I'm listening, Keith. I'm just going through some records here because I actually
answering Loki's question about.
That's what I'm saying. I'm engaging. I'm just here in a crate.
Anyway, that's a Supraphon record. Most countries in what were then communist Europe had a state-owned record label, and so there are an enormous amount of very good, high-quality classical music recordings from that era that exist on all of these former state-owned labels. Some of them still exist. Supraphon kind of still exists, at least as a publishing entity. Others have faded away. This is, for example, Eterna, which was the East German label.
I've got Eterna.
EDR. But do you see this, Stefan? Check this out. This is amazing. This is Richard Strauss. It's 3 pieces of music. It's Don Juan. It's a waltz from one of his operas, and the Totenverkleidung. But this is him conducting. These are actually recordings that were done during the Third Reich by the German state radio in 1944. This came out in East Germany later in the 1960s, but this recording, it's over here. It is actually recorded for German radio broadcast 1944 with Richard Strauss conducting his own pieces. I've never seen this record. I found this I haven't heard it yet, but I found this for basically the equivalent of $1. So I'm extremely curious about it. I will show you
I want to just address Lucky's question, and then I think we're on a bit of a theme here tonight, which is good. Lucky, from my take, because I'm a bit more of a sort of, I'm a bit more anal about my turntable and stylus than Keith is, although Keith cleans and keeps his records well. I think that any Supraphon that is obviously with minimal ringware, all right, that is cleaned up on an ultrasonic or whatever and properly, is going to sound good. It's not the best of the best, but believe me, some of those recordings you're never going to find on any other label, and they're great to have, and they can play quietly.
No, certainly they should be played at a higher volume. They are wonderful. The sound recording, the sound variance of those recordings for that type of music it's outstanding. I'll show you one.
Can I show one record?
Sure.
You got first.
I was going to finish with this, and then let me show you this, and then please take over. This is just one more in that strain of these former state labels in the Soviet bloc. This is a Hungarian record, which is
that's like a US coin. What?
Yes,
that's a Bartok.
It's Bartok.
I
But
love
check this.
Bartok.
Yes, it's Bartok, man.
What
This is-
label?
It says Bartok Bela on the. This is an actual Hungarian coin. That's on this.
So is that on Hungerton?
That's on Hungariton. This but what I'll show you, what's typical for many records from this time, you have the liner notes, the information about it in the local language and also in English, because these things were a big export item. At one point, like, there was still a market, these records were being exported. That's maybe in the 1960s. Obviously, in the 1970s and 80s, because of the Cold War, these things were not so prominent anymore. But in the 1960s, this type of packaging, this is a Hungaritone, not a Superphone, but it's really similar. And I haven't heard this yet, but I cannot believe that this isn't going to be a great recording. The same with that Richard Strauss record.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
why
so grateful that I've got the ultrasound.
I have these compositions on other records. I bought those particular records because I wanted to hear these versions. So yes, please show us, Stella.
Yeah, this is
That's
that's a Tchaikovsky.
Yeah, that's Melodia. That's Melodia, which was the Soviet Union state.
Russia. I mean, it's still plastic. I haven't cleaned it. It's still in some shitty sleeve. I've got to get. Also, inner sleeves are difficult to find. Yeah, I've got to get some sand.
Melodia. In Cyrillic, it says Melodia on the label. It's the
little booklet.
Label those times.
No, that's actually no. This actually, it's interesting because this is in French and English. There's Cyrillic. There's the Cyrillic. And then they've got English and French, but it's printed in the USSR. But I'm telling you, from this pressing, this must be a... Yeah, this is later. It's not as early as I thought it is. I mean, it was bought at Collett's, probably in the UK. I've got some Decca sleeves in here. I was going to just go to a couple of these because this is...
While you're doing that,
fun.
Question, which was, are there any particular Superphone pressings that are considered particularly rare? Most of those that are considered particularly rare by collectors are in the rock music field, because the rock music field in the 1960s was heavily censored. Most foreign bands would not get distributed on Superphone pressings in communist Czechoslovakia, but some did. And some of the compilations that came out around 1967, 1968, 69 are amazing. I have many of them, like compilations of the Beach Boys, of Jimi Hendrix, of Western artists, Julie Driscoll and Brian Auger and the Trinity.
Oh, that's amazing shit.
But that all came out on Superphone pressings at the time. And many of those records are amazing. But there are particular Beatles pressings that were done in that era, which were from the Abbey Road EMI masters, which the Czech Superphone sound engineers remastered for mono for this particular edition that came out here, because it was so complex. All records were approved by the government years in advance. So there would be a certain number of mono records pressed. So these copies of the Beatles Abbey Road record came out only in mono pressings at the time of original release on Superphone. And as I understand it, those are the highly sought after items which are known among collectors. There are loads of great 7-inch Czechoslovak pop records from the 60s and 70s, which are amazingly funky. Some of them are amazingly cheesy and are basically easy listening records. But there are some wonderful sort of weird Northern Soul type classics that hardly anyone knows from old Superphone 7-inches. Obviously, in classical music, Superphone is a leading record label worldwide and always has been. So, but one that I know for a fact, a friend of mine who's doing a documentary about the conductor, Karl Ancherl, who was a Holocaust survivor, a former inmate in the Terezin concentration camp here in Czechoslovakia. Karl Ancherl became later the head of the Czech Philharmonic. And one particular recording that Ancherl did with the Czech Philharmonic in 1960 of Gustav Mahler's First Symphony it's the most reissued classical symphony recorded on Superphone in terms of other labels in other countries reissuing it. That recording has been issued in more than 60 countries, apparently. And the original recording of that, which came out as part of a so-called Gramophonový klub, Gramophone Club, which was a record subscription service. So it wasn't even a for sale item. If you can find one of the originals of that, that's also not only a very sought after record and very valuable, but it is an amazing recording of that Mahler symphony. Mahler was also originally from the Czech Republic, so here he's treated like a local composer, even if he spent more of his professional life in New York and Vienna.
Okay, so the stream's eventually going to be called Vinyl Generation after the election, because I'm going to show you some stuff. So that's on Eterna.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah, the little Stravinsky there. He's a bit of a clean. These are the ones I've decided I'm keeping, and I've still got to go to my storage. There's another one. This is from Poland. Note the stereo sticker.
Oh, you know what? That Chopin record, that I have several of these in this same series. That was a series of complete works that Polska Nagrania put out for some anniversary of Chopin, either his birth or his death or some anniversary. But that series, of which you're holding one record, were complete works that were put out. It was sometime during the 1980s. Whenever I find one of those, I always buy it.
But yeah, I mean, you just look at this. So the cover's battered. You know, I'll put it through the Humming Guru, but just look at the ringware. I mean, this thing's, I think it's been played once.
No, I mean, these records were all mostly like Polska Nagrania.
And then, you know, the stereo there.
Records pressed on Superphone, Polska Nagrania, or Muza, which is the sub-label Polska Nagrania, which Stefan was just showing, or Eterna, are always of a good quality. Buying records from Balkan Tone in Bulgaria or Hungaritone from Hungary are often more cheaply made, more cheaply pressed records. So they're more of a crapshoot. But if you're buying classical music from Superphone, Eterna, Polska Nagrania, it's never bad. Or Melodia, which was the Soviet label. The cheap stuff is all pop music. The classical music stuff always came out on heavyweight, well-pressed vinyl.
It's interesting. I mean, I can't pull it out tonight, but I've got a Melodia press of Jonas Gwanga with the ANC, the African National Congress Choir on Melodia.
I have that too. I have a copy of that too. I also
I mean, you know, so we're bringing South Africa into the vinyl revolution. So, not the vinyl, the vinyl generation.
Speaking of old South African records, Stefan, look at this. You know,
that's one of my favorites. Yeah. Now this one's interesting. Oh, that's great. This is a South African press reissue of a Melodia, but I think it could have been pressed in Rhodesia or where the plates came from. But check this out. So this is on Melodia.
Yes.
But an SA press. And it's got the R-tone there. As you know, just let me make this big. R-tone, you'll see this. That's how we know where you know we had to Interpack and R-tone that did our things. So now look at the record, which is very interesting because we did not have a And I don't know where this was pressed, where the plates came from. Could have been from the UK. I mean, I don't know. It's 1970. But we did not have these. So always interesting to find these gems. And again, you can see these classical collectors hardly played their records. They mostly played them once or twice, or they recorded them all onto cassette. And
Stefan,
some of us,
since Loki is expressing this interest in Carl Ancherl and these particular pressings, let me actually go and
for it, Keith.
show you. I'll be right back. I will answer.
Lucky Keith is a gem. When we managed to find him, is a gem on this stuff. You know, I can't actually wait to listen to some of these records. Oh God, and I need to just get somebody to. I've got to get. I'm getting some inner and outer sent from the States. We've got shortages here right now. The Humming Guru is fine. I've worked out different tanks. I've got the vacuum machine working in conjunction with the Humming Guru. So that, because I've done the archival process. Oh, hello, Mike. Lovely to see you here. But yeah, you know, just like, and then I've got to go through another 4,000 or so that are in storage. That's all classical. Yeah. Anyway, I'll just try and entertain while Keith's grabbing. What else have I been going through this week? Okay, so this is the stuff that I'm keeping. This is a US press to Glenn Gould. And then I think this is a Canadian press. Actually, let me just show this last one quickly. I think it's a dog. No. It's an RCA Victor. Yeah, it's a Canadian press of Horowitz in recital. Another one. So yeah, this is the stuff that I'm keeping. Vladimir Horowitz. I've got and this was printed in Canada. Yeah, it's LM1957. Nicely grooved. Beautiful record. Let's see all that's pressed in Canada. Feels pretty decent. You know, good weight. I think this has been played once. Again, it doesn't even need. Well, it looks it doesn't need a clean, but I promise you, it needs a bit of cavitation from its age.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's got a little dog on the Canadian pressing. Interesting. Canadian pressings aren't that bad.
No, Canadian pressings are also often fine.
Well,
Loki, since you were asking, this is the legendary one. This is the recording, the Superphon recording of the Gustav Mahler First Symphony by Carl Ancherl, which you should see here. Can you read that, Carl Ancherl? It was already spelled correctly in the comments anyway, but this is that recording. This has been reissued by Sony, by Deutsche Grammophon, in Japan, in France, in the UK, in the United States several times. This recording is the most reissued recording ever of the Czech Philharmonic. And this particular issue is that's Gramophonový Klub, the gramophone club from the 1960s. So this wasn't even a commercial release; it was a subscription release. So this is one of the great Superphon records. But since we're talking about Gustav Mahler and how this stuff is issued differently, this is a Melodia recording. This is the Fifth Symphony of Gustav Mahler. It's actually the New York Philharmonic, and the conductor of this was, I think, Walter Bruno. But this is an American recording reissued as Melodia, as on that Soviet state-owned label. And continuing with state-owned labels, this is a Hungaroton. This is Das Knaben Wunderhorn. It's a very nice song cycle of Mahler. But since we're talking about this stuff, these Hungaroton, the actual records, are inferior. They are lightweight vinyl. The recordings are very good, the pressings are a crapshoot. This one is actually good, but I'm always skeptical of certain Hungaroton recordings. But
Got a
to
few.
finish this off with Mahler, I'll just show you two more things. These are wonderful, wonderful recordings. These are among the best Mahler recordings. This is an East German Eterna 1, Symphony Number 4. But this particular recording, which is I think from Dresden, it is from Dresden. This is an amazing record. Eterna, Gustav Mahler, Fourth Symphony, and done in almost the same era, Gustav Mahler Fifth Symphony on Deutsche Grammophon, which is West Germany at that time. And both of these are.
Hang on a minute. Just to pull out the DG record. Is it is it tulips or is it the circles?
It is actually funny. It's actually opus. So it's the old Slovak. This record would have been. This is a repress of the Deutsche Grammophon recording on Opus, which was a brief Slovak label, basically at the end of Czechoslovakia, when the country was already post-revolutionary, but still called Czechoslovakia, so the early 90s. And Opus was a Slovak label of that time.
It's amazing, you know, how these, you know, where they got the recordings for, whether they got it from tape, whether it was needle drops, how these were repressed. Because, you know, we know, and you and I both know, I mean, because we have your friend and an acquaintance of mine that works at a major pressing plant, or is connected with a major pressing plant in Prague, and we know that it's a top pressing plant. You know,
well, Prague, it's near Prague. It's just outside of it.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I've priced the cost of pressing records there, and it's they got something right there. It's a maze of this whole Eastern European thing. I'm going to show one record as well. I mean, this is on RCA, but also just it fits with the theme. It was the Shostakovich, on Monday. It's on RCA, but yeah, it was banned in Russia. It was the first his first recording in the Western world. So this is a UK press. It's RCA, but it's printed in the UK at Robert Stace, and again in time 1970. But this would have been done at RCA, London, one of those beautiful, again, this is still in its plastic, never been played. It's an RCA Red Seal, but that feels like an early Beatles, or early 70s Beatles, UK press, beautiful, nice and shiny. And somehow this was sold to me, and they still marked it inside in a charity shop here for £4. That's like
you can always still find stuff like that.
Yeah, there's lots of it. Yeah, lots. This is a 1970 pressing. And it's just got a lot of weight to it. These are the kind of things that I just like these. Obviously, my family came out of Eastern Europe originally. Obviously there's that fascination, but then there's also that, having spent time in Mongolia and in that whole post-Soviet context as well. This is the stuff that always, kicks my boat. This is another one. Now this will get back. Here's a Supraphon.
Yes, that's a Supraphon. Recognizable logo.
Little gatefold. This is the Vivaldi.
That's what I was talking about. That's an export article. That type of record that has that gatefold and that multilingual information which is often in English, French, German, and Russian. Those
Yep.
records are export records from the 1960s, which are of the highest quality. If you find anything like that on Superphone, those are amazing pressings. The pressings are heavyweight vinyl, beautiful liner notes, very, very excellent issues always.
Yeah,
What
it's
I wasn't interrupting you. I was just trying to acknowledge that in the comments, many people liked seeing these selection of classical records, which I didn't expect. So I'm happy that people are interested. That record you have is another great example.
Thank you. Yeah, so at least I know why I'm keeping these to clean up and listen, before I kick the bucket. What's that reggae song? Long shot, kick the bucket.
Yes.
Long shot, kick the bucket.
Pioneers, as covered by the Specials later.
Yeah, this is when I was like dabbling, should I keep or shouldn't I? But because it's Menuhin, I just decided, I'll keep it. What else is on your pile, Keith?
Well, because I had brought over these Mahler records anyway, I'll just finish with that by this is the Lied van der Erde, the Song of the Earth, which is Píseň o země in Czech language. But this is another one of these Gramophonoví Club recordings that I think is just, I'll show that again. It's just this Gramophonoví Club, which was the subscription only service, like non-commercial records. A lot of amazing things came out in this way. And I don't know if this is also this is a Bruno Walter conducting New York Philharmonic recording. So this is actually an American recording, licensed from CBS, from Columbia Broadcasting System, so CBS Records, and it's this vintage recording. But not only, I will show you this. It is the typical blue Supraphon record at that time, but with Columbia. So this is a joint production of Columbia Records in communist Czechoslovakia.
I mean, that's another thing. I mean, how were they doing business together?
It's weird that somehow there are many records between many co-production records like this across all genres of music, only from Columbia Records. Sometimes from EMI, Decca in the UK, but of the American big labels, it's only Columbia. There's no RCA, there's no Capitol, none of that stuff ever was reissued here. But Columbia, I guess because there was so much going on in terms of collaboration in classical music, because also Czech Philharmonic recordings by Carl Antrel and these people here were being reissued on CBS Columbia at the time. So there was some kind of track going in both directions. But artists that were on Columbia Records are much better known for, let's say, American artists of the 1970s who were on Columbia Records are much better known in this country than others. So Bob Dylan is very well known because his records came out here, because they're on Columbia. Johnny Cash is huge here because his records came out on Columbia. So those things were issued here. The way that we used to be in South Africa, we had this outsized influence in terms of the distribution of Western music in South Africa. Columbia had that here. So this is probably one of those.
I've got Bruno Walter. I've got a big box up there somewhere. Let me get back to screen. Yeah, it's like, now that I've sorted out the room and all of that, just been going through the records, and just deciding what I'm keeping, and there obviously there were a lot of Soviet presses, but then also there's those classic sort of the Eastern European presses, but then also the classic British presses, like this,
sure.
And that's just that's an ASD, that's like I don't know if it's first, but I mean these are just stellar pressings. here is an interesting one, actually. Let me just throw it into a little bit of a curveball, just so we get a bit of a break here. This is so check this out. This is Ella, all right, with Nelson. Real, you can see all that tape around it. But I'm going to put it out because this it's on topic. Don't worry. It's I'm going to make myself big. Now I'm learning from the masters of like Chance and the others. So Keith, what do you see there? Where did that copy come from?
It's actually reversed for me, so I can't read it. But...
are you seeing me on reverse?
Yes, that could be my.
Is everybody else seeing me on reverse? Then I need to reverse camera. I never knew this.
No, it's fine. You're fine. It's just me.
No, but I'm asking the others. Can they read it? Okay, well, it's an SABC copy from the South African Broadcasting Corporation.
Where's that written? I don't even.
Yeah, but I'm going to mirror my camera just to. So now, can you read that now? Keith, does that look right to you, or am I reversed?
Yes, sorry, that looks right to me now.
And to everybody else? Okay. Anyway, I'll stay in reverse. All right. So that's so this is an Ella Swings with Nelson. It's Verve, right?
Yes.
South African pressing PAC, the early whatever. I mean, this thing's been through. I've got another copy of this, but I mean, obviously I kept it because it came from the broadcaster. And then if you look how they.
Who was doing Verve pressings in South Africa at that time? That's interesting.
GV, let me have a look. I'll pull it out. Actually, I mean, they're around. I mean, mine and Mazzy's favorite Ella Fitzgerald is Ella in Berlin, and my dad had an SA pressing and another pressing, and then eventually I've got a UK mono press and another press and whatever. So this is it's if you look at it, it's a full-on Verve.
Yes,
right,
of course.
and even grooved. It's even grooved, like the American ones are. It's grooved. So these plates or whatever, this was when South Africa was still tip-top. It's fully got a large groove, like any decent Blue Note or whatever. And yeah, and then what they did is when they took it out of the SABC, when these things went for sale or whatever, they would stamp it, as you see there, cancelled out of the SABC library. But you can see from the ringware, not the ringware, the spindleware, the spindle. This thing, as much as they wrote on it, has hardly been played. So these just sat in the, and also with SABC, we had so many provinces and so many different radio stations. So if it sat in some sort of unknown province where people went, or could have been an Afrikaner place or a Zulu place where people were into different music. I'm just talking culturally. Not. They would have sat. So the cover's battered, and then what's interesting is also got this little like cutout here. And it's still like a bit of a flip back. It's a decent pressing. But it's just weird that I just pulled it out. I was like, it's like what's in my box? What's in my box at the moment? That's the stuff that I've been going through that's in this room. It's quite amazing. And, Keith, every single record for me that's ever been through the SABC, even if it's the worst or whatever copy, I will never sell. That's part of my own personal little archive. It's just got a, that's from that, that was in the broadcasting house.
No, I also buy certain things that even if I don't necessarily need to listen to it, there are certain things I recognize they should have a home, that for historic reasons, these records should be preserved somewhere. So I know exactly what you mean, like having these peculiar pet projects, things that you just want to say.
Royce in the house is going, Keith Jones. Royce, do you know Keith?
We met on one of the previous shows, I think.
Okay, cool. He's Yeah, I mean, it's just it's just magic just going through these boxes. I mean, let me just see what else is here. Oh, it was so funny this week because there was the big Rhino reissues of the Devo and the Black Sabbath, the first Sabbath, and they're albums that I like. I mean, I've got a decent reissue of that first Sabbath. Actually, that last concert when I'm not sure whether you were around or not, but the last time I saw the
Errol
late
died.
Errol and
It
the late
was
Steve.
there when we had the conversation with Errol backstage after it wasn't his last concert, but I think it was the last concert he played with Steve Guitar, and we
Yeah,
were hanging out with him in the back room, and he opened up about the his love for Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin, and but in particular this was it the first Black Sabbath record, because I remember him naming
because I started speaking about how I got into that through the jazz drumming. I was never. My brother had Sabbath, and I now listen to Sabbath, and I actually sold a few that I regret now. I actually regret it. Because some of them are okay. Some of the early, it's okay. But that first album was always a go-to for me. And Errol and I had a long chat about that one. So Rhino this week or last week, everybody's been moaning. Happily, I managed to get my brother to order in the States for himself that first Sabbath because he wanted it, and it's a great album to have. I've got an earlier reissue, but they also reissued the Devo, which was, I think it was Freedom of Choice, and yeah, I grew up with that. For me, it was just a seminal little album, and I was like, should I get my brother to get it for me or not? I was like, I can stream it, or I've got a CD of it, and guess what? With all these records here, I'm going through my piles, and there it is. But that's a South African press of the Devo. But it was pressed, yeah. It's pretty decent. It's an 80s. This was when Benji and them were Warner Brothers, I think it was still before Tusk.
yeah,
it's a decent press. It's quite
those
weighty.
are those weak. Yes.
Yeah, it's weighty. Again, very, very minimal wear on the thing. But I had it. I've just forgotten about it because you have so many records, and then you go through, and that's the thing is I've decided before I start going mad with too much more music, unless it's really special, I've got to get through the 4,000 here and or 3,000 or 4,000 here and the potentially other 3,000 or 4,000 that are in another storage space of classical. And that's another one. Just Mr. Starker.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's.
Yeah. I don't know if it's Janis Starker.
Yes.
Oh, cellist of notes, and then the last. I'm just gonna.
Janos Starker.
Sorry.
I said yes. A Hungarian cellist, Janos Starker.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's been me. It's just this little box and all of that, and we've gone through elections and whatever. Did you? So what else has been? And another one. Sorry, just getting back to classical. Another highly recommended artist. If anybody's ever, he died early, but Milstein, brilliant violinist. Also top tier for me. You got any Milstein, Keith?
No, I don't. That's new.
Yeah, he was a American. I think Jewish American. I think he died early. Before he was 40. This is a mono. Everybody obviously wants the first stereo, but this is an original mono Capital. But for me, what's really interesting about this is through a friend of mine that's more into more heavy music and sort of more punk and dark metal. But he also listens to classical, and I've got a love affair with Bruch. The Scottish fantasy, all of that. And this is Milstein doing, obviously it's Mendelssohn, but he's also doing Bruch. So any record that I come across, that's got Bruch, who's the late romantic, I'll, obviously if it's a good artist, I'll grab as a composer. And then this is a shitty one, but it's got to be clean. But that's a first press Beatles in mono UK.
Oh, yeah, that's an amazing thing to have for sure.
I'll put it out. It needs a clean, but it's not best. But that's a first. Just It's not that I'm going to play it. It'll go somewhere. It's got to be cleaned up. And then the other one I was going to show you, which I don't know if I showed this. Did I show you this one last week when we spoke or not?
What is that? I don't remember.
Okay, this is an interesting one. So this is, I'm just going to make it big for a while and just so I can just show you here quickly. I don't know if it's reading backwards because for me it's reading backwards, but this was recorded in Israel.
Oh, yes.
Not on. Did we talk about this one last time?
You did. That's why I was saying now I recognize it. This Israeli, yes.
Yeah, and it's got all that. Sorry, I'm just going to go back to the other layout. Yeah, so I mean, Siggy Sigerman, but I mean, the fact that it's got the, I'm just going back to it, and I know we repeat ourselves, but Handel's Messiah, the Bach Christmas Oratorio, the St. Matthew Passion, various recordings over years, festival choir and orchestra, 1973, and it just says here, not for sale, in the corner, not on label. I go into Discogs and I see this thing and I'm like, okay, well, this has some value. It's very, very interesting. It's written to family members in Hebrew, 1973, and there's a little writing inside, and just this is in the old plastic, but these are like just heavy plates, as the Chinese call them, dishes, plates, whatever. That'll get clean. But I mean, these are the kind of records that I won't let go until I've listened to them. You know what I mean? They just have a fascination of a time and a place in history that I think is what and again, it's getting back to your form and why we keep talking is that time and place in history for every single recording, and not and sure, stuff gets re-released or whatever, but it's more not the obsession with like the fidelity, but the understanding of the time and the place for a piece of art that happened and why it takes a place in mine and yours and other people's lives.
Certainly. That's, I think every physical artifact has that. The physical artifact has always a certain presence. It has a certain spirit to itself. And even knowing that physical object is 50 years old or 60 years old gives it a certain more gravitas. So it's even more than the music which is contained on it, which is usually also very interesting and it informs us a lot about the time in which it was made. But just the artifact, just having the thing, it conveys so much information. I think that's part of the fascination with vinyl records, certainly, that they convey so much spirit, so much atmosphere just by their physical presence, just by being around.
Sorry, I'm just looking at there's a bit of sense of humor. Loki, just joking comments. What did he say? I said, Sue, do you want to give me a Patreon admin detail? That's about Rachel's Patreon. There's obviously Loki's at somebody, but this is the funny one about Milstein. Loki, how do we know that Milstein looks like he drinks vodka martinis? I think all of us Jews like vodka martinis from time to time.
I should also.
Keith, it's interesting. When the doctor was here, we went down to Hot Bay, and they've got I'm not into gin. I mean, I like a bit of vodka from time to time, but gin's become a thing, and they're distilling here. But we went down to Hot Bay where they've got
possibly.
Sorry.
Alsjeblieft, meneer Jennifer. Don't say that colonialist word, gin. Jennifer. No. Don't worry. Jennifer is the Afrikaans word for gin. You should know this, my bro. Like, I can't believe
it. Yeah, bro. Ek weet it. But anyway, they had a different, from berries and whatever, like the States, the bespoke stuff. But this dude had made one gin, all right, that was chili infused. It was the doc and his wife, and we tasted this shit. And it had an after, the guy, like you literally have a little shot. you know, this infused gin, but it had like chili. But it was like dancing on my tongue, you know. It was very, very pleasant. This is in Half Bay.
Gin is very nice to drink with spices in it, for sure. I don't drink a lot of gin. I don't drink it at home, and I don't really drink gin martinis. I'm not that much of a cocktail drinker, but I do sometimes if I'm out ordering those sort of drinks to have really cold gin with coriander or with certain uh, other sort those sort of spices that are crushed seeds. If they are shaken with gin, it's absolutely delicious. I'm sure chili is as well. It is a drink that absorbs these sort of flavors beautifully. It's a nice thing to drink, particularly in Africa when the sun is going down. I probably drank much more gin in Africa than.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. It's like I got to be around certain people when I drink gin. I don't generally drink gin. You know, it'll either be
Kind of drink. I drink cold gin, but with spices, I agree. It's even better. It's a
Do you remember the most amazing thing about how the late Steve Fattar used to drink his tequila?
yeah, with nachos, with
He followed up with a nachi, with a what do you call it in the States? A tangerine, or what's it?
well, it's even it technically, I guess it is a tangerine, but it's a mandarin. It's a
Pour myself
mandarin.
out.
It's a even smaller version of a tangerine, but those fruits are local. They're indigenous to KwaZulu-Natal from all around Durban, where Steve Fattar was from. So when we encountered him, and where Stefan and I were out drinking with Steve Fattar, shooting for a film project, he introduced us to this style he had, where he would order rounds of tequila for people he was drinking with, but would then produce these fruits that he had on his own, and he would say, "Let me introduce you to the Durban way of drinking tequila. Don't take it with orange peel or lemon. Take it with a nachi, with these mandarins." And it was very charming, and also the tequila was nicer with that fruit, and it Africanized the drink. It was a beautiful, wonderful experience, and I saw him do it more than once. I actually drank my share of tequilas with Steve Fattar. So did Stefan. We both.
No,
did.
the best was the time when we went with one of the other potential producers on the project. He's still a friend, but this is David, but he's not involved anymore. When I did a trip to Durban, and we were with Steve, and I just had to get to deal with some stuff with the late Steve and family and stuff. And I remember because I'd lived in Durban, that I just decided because Cape curry and Durban curry is very different. Cape curry is more the Indonesia Malay style, whereas Durban
Certainly.
curry is more the
Indian, yes.
Nepali Nepal Indian style, which I prefer, having worked there. And so I said to Steve, listen, and whatever, and he found some place where we're going to go, and there was tandoori lamb chops, which is what I wanted. Done in the tandoori, drop in properly, lamb chops. So cool, we go there. So now I said to Steve, well, Dave's coming with, where can we get a beer, whatever? He's like, no, I got my tequila and stuff. I said, can we get beer, whatever? No, there's like an off sales, which is like a little like hotel kind of thing there where you can bring your own, because they didn't have a license. And the off sale thing also had slot machines and one-arm bandits. So anyway, Steve had brought some money to to sort of buy, I don't know, dinner or whatever. And Dave said, look, I'm covering this and this and this. So the next thing, and I'm kind of getting the beer and stuff from whatever. Dave's covering the meal and stuff, and Steve had brought some money with. But the next thing, all I do is I'm like sitting at dinner, like waiting for my dinner, and I kind of got the beer and everything at the table. And I'm like, where's Steve and Dave gone? And they're back in the off sales where I got the beer. Okay. And Steve had taken all of the money that he'd brought for the dinner, but now they were playing the slot machines, the one-arm bandits, him and Dave, who was our other producer. It was just this like surreal, most brilliant experience of like this, that's the New Orleans of Durban that you talk about, Keith. That crazy sort of thing, where the restaurant, this, that, and then the next thing there's like some slot machine. All right. And they've converted everything into coins, and they're just like, playing the one-arm bandits. It was It was amazing, you know. I miss those days. I miss the town, you know, and all of that. And you know, please God that with the current election and you know, obviously the Zulu isiZulu faction being split as it is in KZN, that they also going to get their coalition together because you know that's one of the music capitals of Africa in its own way.
Certainly, always was, and it still is. And the music that comes out of there even now is incredible. But I have always been a champion of Durban. I made many films there. So.
Well, you know, and I think I'm gonna want to shut the stream soon anyway, and we've been talking for a while. But if I think about it, if I have to think, you know, we can go on for a bit, but if I have to just have my final thoughts about what you've given me tonight, and about, you know, we've spoken about the election, and we always come back to Durban, is it goes from Solomon Linda, you know, The Lion Sleeps Tonight, Mbube, and Stolen Music, as you talk, a Zulu Shepherd, through to punk rockers like Michael Fleck and Wild Youth. And that's some of the misunderstanding of some of the provinces and amazing places that we have in this country in terms of music. Sorry?
I said, do you think it's really a misunderstanding, though? I mean, it's just that the different regions have their own identity.
No. What I'm saying is people don't connect the dots of
one province to another.
The dots of a province. That's what I was trying to say. Is, you know, as important as Solomon Linda is, and has been celebrated and has been stolen from, and is an icon. We also have punk icons.
For sure. I'm just showing this Miriam Makeba record has Solomon Linda's song Mbube credited properly. I don't know when this record is from. Probably from the.
Where's that one pressed? UK, London.
It says it's London, but I think it's a South African pressing because it says ZA all over it. But let me check the actual.
It'll say pack on it. Yeah. It probably. I think I've got the same one.
Probably. I was mainly showing it because of the fact that it has the Mbube. At this time, this is a much older record. It was still credited properly. Still, that it's just further evidence that people knew they were stealing something. I don't know where this doesn't have the.
No, if you go to the back cover, the back cover of the record will either. So in those days, it wouldn't say Artone or whatever. It would say PAC somewhere where. No, not the actual LP.
I'll check it in a second. No, I'm just double checking this, and yes, if that's visible, the last song on the side is Mbube, and it's credited to Solomon Linda. The songwriting credit, the royalties credit is on that record. That's London Records recording from the early 60s. Stefan and I are trying to figure out where this was pressed. I'm not sure.
But no, it is South Africa. It's got the ZA there.
I thought ZA, it's South African. But Solomon Linda is credited as the composer of the song, as you all saw. So that is why I have had this conversation for many years with Stefan about this scam that was perpetuated over the disputed ownership of this song. It was never disputed in the first place. But this shows you what nonsense this is. The South African pressing of this Miriam Makeba record, London Records, has Solomon Linda credited. So why did this family never see royalties for decades? That's you have seen now the actual proof that this stuff was always credited. There was no mistake. It wasn't a Zulu folk song. It wasn't credited to Pete Seeger. It was never credited to anyone but Solomon Linda from the beginning. That's as Stefan knows, I have very strong opinions about this because it's just an unbelievably shocking story of copyright infringement, which happens to be about one of the most recognizable songs of the 20th century, which was, I think, a #1 song 3 different times in the United States by 3 different recording artists, and was featured in the Disney musical on Broadway, The Lion King, and so on. So it's a remarkable case of piracy. However, as you saw, always attributed to Solomon Linda. Okay.
Yeah.
Please
Keith,
continue.
I've spoken to somebody earlier because we can do a stream next week or so. We're paving the way for some cultural boycott and other stuff, on the way, en route. Eventually, there's some good stuff going down, but it's actually it's quite amazing that just to kind of what I've taken in from you tonight, and I hope that people who've been Leola's here, Dagon, all of them, I just haven't been following the people in the gallery because you and I just get on a roll. But I've taken on
paying attention to them and
understanding of my own music collection and my own being and heritage and where I've walked tonight by just sitting with you in a room. And I said, hey, should we just chat, And I went through some classical records. You went through your Makeba stuff. We went through the Solomon Linda stuff, which we've been talking about for more than 10 years, And
I also want to say, if anyone who is in the comments following this, if you're more interested in that Solomon Linda copyright story, the documentary film Alliance Trail, which was produced by our mutual friend Dan Javits and directed by Francois Verstier.
And Francois one of my best friends. I hang out with him all the time.
So let's just give a shout out to his wonderful film.
Shout out to Francois. Maybe I should get him on a stream.
Was documenting that story. So if anyone is interested to really pursue that further, which it should be pursued further, that film is an excellent place to start.
Yeah, and actually, I haven't spoken
as well.
To remind me, I haven't spoken to Francois in a while. I need to actually just give him a shot. He's down, and I saw Dan the last time. Actually, I saw Dan with him at New Year's party at Francois' house, and they were jamming in a band. They had I organized the sound system. Sorry,
Dan Roberts. Which Dan?
Dan Javits.
Dan Javits. Okay, yeah, sure, of course.
Yeah, he's moved to Cape Town as well.
Okay, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. He's originally they were all in Joburg, but yeah, he's been here for quite a while. So yeah, I need to connect with those guys again. They're good people. Good people. I mean, Francois' wife was the brave one who did the documentary about the public prosecutor, about Thuli Madonsela. There's, they're also, she's originally from Durban, yeah, all gets back to Durban. Yeah. Durban. So that's it. These are my closing words. Keith, you got anything to say?
No, I just want to thank all these people for commenting and listening to what we had to say, because that's what makes it worthwhile to do this stuff, is to have some feedback and some engagement with people who are actually listening to it. I'm always happy to join you, Stefan. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I just want to see if there's any comments that are not answered, because we just we've gone through the Chechia stuff, just because these are real vinylistas, or just not vinyl, just people that are into music, that just kind of go differently. I don't know, that's a horrible word, just I love the random people that just pop up, when we kind of just do a random little okay, let's have a little midweek kind of chat. Leila's eating tapas. I needed tapas earlier. No, these guys, these people are just fantastic, and it's a blessing. We'll carry on as we can, through our projects, and just because it also keeps us engaged with the rest of the world, and what people are listening to, and who's interested in what you're doing and what I'm doing and what everyone and what other people are doing as well.
Sure, it's always great, man. Thank you for having me.
Alrighty, yeah, Keith, we're not going to need to go backstage tonight. I'm just going to say goodnight to everybody, and you. I really, really want to thank you just for, hitting. It's lucky I'm going to bloody. Yeah, Chechia's fine.
It it is in some ways the internationally used name in some conditions, but nobody here says that. Nobody in the Czech Republic actually calls it that or has much patience for that. That's not what's on our money and on our stamps, but it is on the sports jersey, and it is technically also in the country, I suppose.
Anyway, I just want to thank everybody, and Keith. Yeah, I'll catch you in the week. Have a very productive week. I know that you've got some stuff coming up with Gary and all of that. So yeah, I'll be in touch. And let's just say cheers to everybody. And I'm going to end the stream.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. Good night.
Okay, later. Take care, everyone. Night. Ciao, Keith. Cheers, everyone. Thanks.